I have just completed one of the greatest games that I've ever played, NieR Replicant. Before anyone asks, I got endings A to E, and I also did every side mission in the game. I wanted to get my money's worth this game, and I absolutely did. Now, this is not my first time playing a NieR game. I have played NieR Automata, but that's it. Now, I absolutely adore NieR Automata. In fact, I currently consider it to be my second favourite game. It's sandwiched in between Persona 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm not going to talk too much about NieR Automata in this video, although I will definitely mention it every now and then, as I believe NieR Automata is deserving of its own video down the line. Plus, it's just got an anime adaptation, and I'm definitely watching that at some point. But the point is that I really like NieR Automata, and it should come as no surprise that I believe NieR Replicant is a masterpiece. There are a few things that I may mention that might not be positive, but I want it to be known that this is one of the best games that I've ever played, and I'm not really sure where to start with this video. Let's start with the characters and then we'll progress into the story, shall we? Also, I am going to talk spoilers in this video. I think it's very important for me to talk about what actually happens in this game, so you can truly understand how I feel, especially as I do want to talk about each of the endings in this game, because there is one in particular that I absolutely adore. But let's start with the characters like I said. Firstly, there is NieR, or Darius as he was called in my game. I'm just mentioning that here in case I accidentally refer to him as Darius at any point in the video. In fact, here's the first negative I'm going to mention. I kind of wish NieR actually had a name and not one that you come up with yourself. It is true that certain moments in the game are better because you gave your character a name, specifically endings A and E, but there are also moments in the game where your character having a name created by you gets in the way. For example, characters never directly refer to your character and will even sometimes completely ignore that he's there at times. So you'll have Emil giving this great speech where he says, "I love you guys, I love you Kaine, I love you Vice, I love each and every one of you." Because he obviously can't say the main character's name, because that will be different for each person's playthrough, and sometimes it would take me out of the experience. It's not a big issue, and it definitely is a double-edged sword, as both endings A and E hinge on the fact that everyone has named their character something different, but personally I prefer when my main characters have names like 9S or 2B. Now, NieR's actual characterization is also really good, mainly because he's a very likeable lead. Even in the later parts of the game, when a character becomes a lot darker, he never loses the kindness within himself. I think both Zach Aguilera and Ray Chase did a fantastic job voicing the character. Zach Aguilera does a great job of making the younger NieR in part 1 feel like a very innocent person. The NieR in part 1 feels like an older brother trying to look after his sister, and he has this very do-gooder energy, as he's always defending the people around him and doing his best to help others. Part 1 of NieR Replicant isn't as dark as part 2, and Zach Aguilera's version of the character perfectly fits this part of the game. However, there are very profound and sad moments within the first part of the game, and NieR's innocence at this stage contrasts really well with these darker moments. It makes them more impactful because you're witnessing someone go through things that he really doesn't deserve to go through. And then in part 2, after he's lost Yona, the one thing that drives him, Ray Chase imbues the character with a much more world-weary persona. He's far angrier than his part 1 counterpart, snapping at characters that he never would have before. It perfectly suits the much grittier, darker storyline in part 2. However, the character still feels like that kind boy from part 1. He always puts others first. Killing the Shades is in the defense of the people around him. Snapping at Devil and Poplar is because Kaine and Emil are being mistreated. He's angry at the world because he wants to see his sister again. He's a brilliant lead, and I love how you view his character can change depending on the playthrough, something I'll discuss more later. Kaine feels like a bit of a missed opportunity at times for me. I think she is a great character, but after playing NieR Automata and seeing how attached I got to both 2B and 9S, I really think they should have made Kaine more integral to the game. By that I mean I wish that they let her go into some of the locations with you. She doesn't follow you into Seafront or Facade or your village. And so, if you do the side quests like I did, there will be portions of the game where it feels like Kaine doesn't really say or do much. This contrasts greatly to Grimoire Vice, who is always with you and always has lines of dialogue for everything that you do. Unsurprisingly, Grimoire Vice ended up being my favourite character purely because I spent so much time with him and even got to hear his viewpoint on occasionally very unimportant things. I really wish that I had this with Kaine too, because I do think she's a fascinating character, and a very unique one considering the unusual circumstances of who she is. Fortunately, playthrough B adds a lot of backstory to the character, and you get a better understanding of who this person is, and I love that playthrough E lets you play as Kaine, something I really hoped one of the other playthroughs would have let you do, like how the second playthrough of NieR Automata has you control 9S. Plus, Kaine is voiced by Laura Bailey, so you already know that the voice acting for the character is great, and it is. Kaine is a very stubborn, foul-mouthed character, and she really stands apart from everyone else in both NieR Replicant and NieR Automata. Sometimes she'll say something and you'll wonder how she's even able to string a bunch of these swear words together. She just constantly curses. But I think she is a really interesting character and I love discovering more about who she is in each playthrough of the game. Since I mentioned him a little earlier, let's talk about Grimoire Weiss. Grimoire Weiss is the best character in the game in my opinion, and has absolutely to do with Liam O'Brien's performance as the character. Weiss comes across as this grandiose figure, a book that loves to hear itself speak. He's quite a narcissistic character, often questioning the humans in a way that is clearly looking down upon them, but I think that this really enriches his character as he undergoes the best character development in the game in my opinion. Weiss changes quite dramatically over the course of the game. He still retains a high opinion of himself, but you can tell that his time with NieR has softened him and that he has grown quite fond of the humans around him. And this transition is greatly helped by him playing a huge role in the side missions. He always seems befuddled by everything that happens during side missions, even confused why NieR does them in the first place. But every now and then these missions deeply affect him and really aid in illustrating that Weiss can change and is changing with each passing day. Plus, when Kaine does get involved, I love how the two of them constantly squabble and call each other names. It really does make it clear that the two of them are good friends by the end of the game. I said that the part 1 NieR is a very innocent person, however his innocence cannot hold a candle to Emil. Emil is just a ball of joy and love and I want him to achieve happiness. I'm so glad that I never did his boss fight in NieR Automata because I don't know if I have the heart to do it. Like Kaine, Emil doesn't usually follow you into certain locations, which makes sense due to his appearance. However, I actually believe that, unlike Kaine, it works better to have the character be present in small doses. Emil is a very mysterious character, arguably the most mysterious out of both NieR Replicant and NieR Automata. I think the approach the game took by having a couple of side quests about him and some text-based sections devoted to him were the best way to reveal things about his character. Additionally, it's implied that NieR and Kaine have feelings for each other. Ending C makes it very clear that NieR loves Kaine. Because of this, I wish that there were more interactions between the characters. Whilst I did read that Emil has feelings for NieR, they are obviously one-sided and unrequited. Therefore, I don't need for the two characters to have constant interactions. Plus, Emil is in NieR Automata, so he gets more opportunities to shine there, unlike Kaine. Overall though, I think the main part of the game, NieR, Kaine, Emil and Grimoire Weiss, is excellent. Any issues that I listed them, or the game, are minor, but when you love something, you do highlight problems. The story of the game is magnificent and is often unflinching in how dark it can be. Characters die in this game, and not just some red shirts or characters that you can't even remember the name of. No, actual, legitimate characters that you love will die in this game. Sometimes quite horribly and unjustly too. The way Kaine and Emil are treated in this game is unfair, but there's nothing you can do about it. Whenever the game loads between areas, you're treated to Yona's diary entries, which really paint a picture of who this girl is. She's a very lonely person who wants nothing more than to spend time with the brother that she loves. Like Kaine, I do wish the game explored Yona a bit more, since she's missing from most of part 2, and therefore also most of the subsequent playthroughs too. I really wish we got to see her in ending E, especially because of how much she loves her brother, but I do like the approach the game took by fleshing out this character through diary entries in between game loads. This game pulls no punches and really hammers home this sense of hopelessness. Every character suffers in this game, from the lead to that one dude who couldn't even find his dog. This is a sad game, and because of that, it's also a very memorable one too. Let's discuss the endings. Playthrough A is absolutely my favourite of the playthroughs. It was the longest playthrough for me, and I also did all the side missions on this playthrough, but I think it has the worst ending. To me, it felt like a very Blue Balls ending, which you realise on subsequent playthroughs that it is. NieR defeats the Shadow Lord, who is a villain with potentially the worst name ever. Every time I heard it, I just kept thinking that it would have been better if this guy's name was the Big Bad. It would have been less funny that way, but regardless, NieR kills the Shadow Lord and reunites with Yona. The end. It's a very weak conclusion, and I wouldn't be surprised that if some people left the game here feeling a bit let down. After such an amazing story and after so many character deaths in quick succession, it was a bit anticlimactic to have the game end with the two of them holding hands, looking up at the sky, whilst Kaine walks off. Fortunately, playthrough B fixes this ending for me. Whilst none of the subsequent playthroughs live up to the first for me, they all build on the story and each one delivers a better ending than A. In fact, I love ending B. The second playthrough allows you to understand what the shades are saying, which at times turns things on its head, and in some cases makes you look like a villain. It reminds me of when I restarted NieR Replicant and discovered that both the shades at the start of the game and Kaine won't attack you unless you attack first. A lot of what the shades say to you can be boiled down to leave us alone, which really makes you feel like crap. Unfortunately, what the shades say still sounds like gibberish instead of actual words. It's just that you can now read the text for what they're saying. I think this was a bit of a mistake, as sometimes the shades will talk during battle, but I often miss what they were saying because I was in battle. Like, my focus was dodging red balls and hitting people. I didn't really have the opportunity to look up at the left corner of the screen to see what the shades were saying, so I really do think that we should have been able to understand what the shades were saying through their audio too, but it's only a problem during combat sections. Like I said, I really like ending B. It made me really care about the villain. It helps that you played as the Shadow Lord at the start of the game. I could sympathise with him, and I'm glad that ending B focused on him and brought his story to a satisfying conclusion. Compared to NieR Automata's third playthrough, the one in NieR Replicant is a bit more disappointing, but it does feature an additional boss fight, a couple more cutscenes, and an extra text section revealing how Emil survived the climax of the game. The boss fight with Kaine is pretty good. I'll be honest, none of the boss fights blew me away in this game, but I don't know if that's because they were weak or if it's because this is the first game that I played after Dark Souls 3. I do actually really like the gameplay in NieR Replicant. I love using all the different types of magic to fight the shades, and I love the combination of both melee and shooting in this game. I also love when the camera shifts to either a side-scroller or top-down. This series is really unique, and just like the story and characters, I adore the combat. But we're talking about Ending C. As far as I can tell, Ending C is the only one that isn't canon, or at least it's the only one that I don't consider canon, as Ending C and D follow on from Endings A and B, and Ending E follows on from Ending D. However, I still appreciate Ending C, as it does make it clear to me that NieR does have feelings for Kaine, and therefore reveals a bit more about him, and also the relationship that he has with her. But Ending C is completely overshadowed by Ending D. Ending D is my favourite out of all the endings, and is one of the greatest endings I've ever seen to anything. It is so sad. It affected me on an emotional level that I couldn't even believe. Ending D results in your character's very existence being erased. Like, damn. And not only that, but your entire save files are removed, just to hammer the point home even further. It's an ending that could only exist in a video game format, and it's a fate worse than death, because none of the characters will remember NieR. Just watching my inventory and all my quests and all my save files all slowly disappear was really effective. I didn't know how to react, and I really felt bad for the main character. He suffered so much to save his sister, and now he wasn't going to spend any more time with her, and she wasn't even going to remember him. How sad is that? It is such a unique way to end the game, and from what I understand, this was the original final ending to NieR Replicant when it first released. So all the people who originally played NieR Replicant and NieR Gestalt must have been basking in misery after they all played those games. But then there's Ending E, which is the closest this game can give us to a happy ending. You get to play as Kaine. Finally. You get to see the reunion between Kaine and Emil. For some reason it took Emil 3 years to get back to Kaine. That's another thing about the main game that bothered me. There's this 5-year time jump, but it feels like very little happened in that 5-year time jump. Like one of the Junkheap brothers dies, but NieR doesn't find out about it until significantly later. So I'm supposed to assume that he never once visited the Junkheap in those 5 years, even though that's where he gets his weapon upgraded. Also, if I'm remembering correctly, he doesn't visit Emil at any point during the time jump, which also feels weird. Anyway, Emil and Kaine take on these robots in the memory tree, which then leads to a very NieR Automata looking area, where they get reunited with Grimoire Weiss for a final time, and it all leads to a final ending where Yoko Taro snorted a bit more coke than he did for the other endings, and NieR is reborn inside of a massive flower, naked, and he looks like the Part 1 NieR, all whilst Kaine holds him close. It's a strange ending, and a happy one, although I do wish we got to see Yona's reaction to her brother's return, but you know, at least NieR is back. So I should be grateful that he's no longer erased from existence. What a crazy way to end a story. Honestly, I should have expected no less. This game is fantastic, and so is the story and its endings, but it's not just the main story that I love the side quests too. Admittedly, the gameplay for the side quests isn't the best, as a lot of them are fetch quests, which is quite disappointing from a gameplay standpoint, but that still doesn't stop me from completing all of them. And the reason for that is because a lot of the side missions have very compelling stories and usually great ends. Even the fishing side mission ends in tragedy. I loved going through all of them like a checklist, and a lot of them actually enriched the main story. The side missions with the Red Bagman made his death in the main story more impactful. The Postman side missions made me care more when he became integral to the main story. The Lighthouse Lady side missions gave me a better understanding of the people of Seafront. The King of Facade side missions really deepened the friendship he had with NieR. Yona's side missions really highlight how much he loved and misses her brother. The fact I had to go to Devila to find out where side missions were made her much more memorable, especially as it's popular that you talk to throughout the main story. The side missions are fantastic, especially as I usually avoid side missions because they're usually quite bland, but the ones in NieR Replicant are worth experiencing, purely because it really expands the world of NieR Replicant. Also, NieR Replicant has some of the most memorable locations in gaming for me, most notably Seafront and Facade. I just love how both feel like tight-knit communities. Seafront is a beautiful place and somewhere that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't mind living. It's just really beautiful and relaxing, and Facade has just enough quirkiness to it. I actually like the system where you have to ride on sand to get anywhere. It makes the location so unique compared to everything that I've played before, and I was so happy whenever the story made me go to either Facade or Seafront. The area is also a very unique location, but it's also quite empty. And there's not many side quests here, so I didn't visit this location as much as Seafront or Facade. However, I like that all three of these areas stick out to me and don't remind me of anything from NieR Automata. The junk heap let me down a little bit, but I think that's another case of NieR Automata improving on something from NieR Replicant in the same way that it did with the multiple playthrough idea. The Forest of Myth was criminally underdeveloped, so I'm glad that Playthrough E used it as its primary location. I really like the horror vibes of Emil's house, which is very fitting, and NieR's village was nice and homely, so I won't complain about it. Before I start to wrap things up, I need to talk about the soundtrack for this game. It is beautiful, hauntingly so at times. It's one of the best and most unique soundtracks I've ever heard for a game, which is so perfect for NieR, one of the best and most unique games that I've ever played. I can't believe that the Japanese didn't think that we would like this game when it first came out. For those not aware, there were two versions of this game when it released. There was NieR Replicant and NieR Gestalt. NieR Replicant was the original idea and released in Japan, but the people at Square Enix, I believed in their faith that Western audiences would like the game. So they created another version of the game called NieR Gestalt that would hopefully be more appealing to Western audiences. Both versions released in Japan, but only Gestalt was released to the West. The story and characters are overall the same in both, but there are a couple of differences. Firstly, NieR is aged up and is Yona's dad instead of her brother, as Square Enix believed a father-daughter relationship was more appealing to Western audiences than a brother-sister one, which honestly I can see why they would think that. Plus, NieR is extremely masculine in Gestalt, whilst he is more feminine in Replicant. Also, the soundtrack is a lot edgier in Gestalt. You do actually get a taste of NieR Gestalt and NieR Replicant, as there is a side mission that lets you experience NieR Gestalt, and I've got to be honest, I really enjoyed playing those segments a lot more than I thought I would. I even really enjoyed the soundtrack, as blasphemous as it might be to say that. I guess even when Yokotaro is forced to do things, he still ends up making gold. NieR Replicant is a fantastic game, and if it wasn't for the huge amount of unplayed games that I need to experience, I would be jumping headfirst into NieR Automata just to get my NieR fix. Fortunately, there is the anime, but I'm not sure whether to play Automata again and then watch the anime, or just watch the anime since I've already played Automata. Either way, I'm in for a treat. NieR Replicant is a masterpiece that I'm so glad that I got to experience. I think I would still put Automata above it, but that doesn't stop this game from being a 10 out of 10. In fact, this game might even be in my top 10 favourite games now. I don't know, I'd have to think about it. It's certainly in my top 50. But anyway, I hope you guys liked this video and enjoyed NieR Replicant as much as I did, because this game was an experience and one that I won't soon forget.